next meeting of the Finance Committee is Wednesday, October 16th, 2019. The time is 4:45. I'm Laura McNally, 5th Ward City Council person and Chairwoman. To my right,
Nate Paper, 3rd Ward City Councilman.
Kevin Flint, Street Department and Buildings and Grounds.
Dawn Turnish, Parks and Recreation. Aaron Bishop, Health Department.
Joe Sasso, Public Works.
Dana Lance, Law Department.
Ricky Foster, my chief of staff, and Steve Head.
Tito Brown, Mayor of Youngstown.
Barry Finley, Fire Chief. Julius Hall with the First Ward City Council.
Mike Gray, 4th Ward Councilman.
Kyle Mizak, Finance.
Bosh Adams, Act 7th Ward Council and Committee Vice Chair.
Nita Davis, 6th Ward City Council and member.
Jim Bowser, WKBN.
Stan Boney, WKVN.
Danielle Potterman, WFMJ.
Nicole Hardy, down in Youngstown.
Riker, Code Enforcement, Demolition.
Jonathan Huss, Civil Service.
Rhonda Lees, Chief of Police.
Matt Davies, Local 12.
Debbie Covino.
Deborah Cato Wagner, yes.
Domain Kitchen, Council President.
Paul Scott, Attorney at Law.
Troy Rhodes, Ohio Edison First Energy.
Dan From, Suez Advanced Solutions.
Harry Johnson, Water Department.
Alexis Ray, Youngstown State University.
Rick Logan, YSU and Tribune Chronicle Vindicator.
George White, Youngstown State student.
Jennifer Ottinger, Assistant Clerk. Valencia Merrill, City Clerk. Okay. We'll go to pending legislation under resolution. Number 1 here is the Mahoning County Solid Waste Management Plan. We recently had a meeting on this. Is there anything anyone wants to say about that or questions? Continuing, Mike?
Through the chair, we did have a Public Utilities Committee meeting last week and went through the plan pretty extensively and the different areas. Seems like it's pretty straightforward. Since we are the largest municipality in the district, we do have to vote on it for it to go forward. There were some things that we probably need to negotiate with next year's budget to see some better funding in certain areas. Their funding has increased and they've stepped back advertising for litter programs, and they think that we have a high volume of contamination in the recyclables that they do get, so they want to do some education, spend some money on that. But I think we definitely have the case to advocate for some additional funding in some other areas in future budgets. But they do approve a budget annually for distribution, so we should go to those meetings and make sure we lobby for what we need to.
Okay. Move on under ordinances. Number 2, Street Department. Kevin?
Yes, through the chair, this is to make payment to repair a triaxle jump that was damaged in an accident. We are going to be reimbursed by insurance. Make payment.
Questions? Okay. Number 3.
Through the chair, this is our share of the countywide radio maintenance agreement. It's actually factored on the number of radios that we use and have within the system.
Questions? Number 4. I don't know what, oh, Erin, you want to talk about these?
Yes, through the chair. After working with a consultant, one of the recommendations that we talked about was to maybe bring the litter department under the health department. That was talked about, a year ago, and then we really looked into that because of the close relationship we do have with the litter control department. We thought it made sense. Years ago, the health department, the litter department was under the health department, and then wasn't anymore. So we just thought this was a good time with the person leaving, the coordinator position leaving. We thought maybe this would be a good time for them to come under the health department. So in doing different meetings and talking with Costerly, myself, the mayor, went to the Board of Health, see if this was a good fit, and they all agreed that it would be a good fit. And makes sense. In the past, we have split the position. We had a sanitarian that worked with the tires, so he worked part-time in litter and part-time in the health department. So we'd like to bring that back where we can use, one of our sanitarians that could do some of that work. And so I think it makes sense with all the work that we do together. We get lots of complaints on houses that, have trash issues, health issues, so I think this is a good time to bring that. And with that moving, we do have this office space for them, so that's another perk, moving that position.
More questions? TJ?
I know it's very small, but what was the purpose for the salary adjustment?
For the aid, we did like with the, we do the steps in the health department. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Kyle, do you wanna?
Through the chair,
Uh-huh.
ASME's contract had a 1% wage increase on June 1 of this calendar year, so that is reflected that because it's not the master salary, because we only do that once a year at the beginning of each calendar year, that update is not in that actual item, so that's what you are seeing displayed there is the adjusted salary per the contract.
Mike?
Through the chair, just, are we still going to call it Green Youngstown?
Right now, we are, yes.
Oh.
And then if anyone wants to change that, I mean, we can talk about that, but right now.
As a follow-up, because I think it's, a lot of council members know, especially with the elderly folks in our community, they still think you call the health department for code enforcement issues. So we do have an educational component there where there's confusion. I see Mike Durkin shaking his head because, maybe doing some kind of or thinking about educating folks. So they still think if it's unsanitary conditions, that it always falls to health department. A lot of times it is a code enforcement issue, and I think there's confusion because they call the health department then.
Through the chair, I think, we've talked with Mike, myself and Tara, who's our director, of environmental health to really streamline that. We want to work together, so, and we have been, I think, better than.
Julia?
Through the chair, so is there gonna be any additional staffing that is needed, or do you just plan on filling Jen's position and working with the staffing already?
Yes, there is already one person at the aid, and she would just come over to the health department, and then we would have to fill the position of Jen for the coordinator position, yes.
Go ahead.
How about the position that Deputy Walker used to have?
I don't know what's going on with that yet.
Dana?
If I can through the chair, that is not presently funded as part of the meeting dealing with the solid waste management district agreement. They have not provided the funding for that until the sheriff's department has the manpower to fill that. And my understanding is the sheriff's department does not have the manpower to staff all required positions. They have a hiring problem right now, so they do not have anybody that they can put in that. And until they do, they won't fund that.
Julius?
So what do we plan on doing for that vacancy?
That's
Good, Dana.
It's not our vacancy. That was a position that was paid for through the solid waste management district plan for a sheriff's department employee. So we don't have that person available.
I understand that, but in the meantime, how do we get the work done that this position was doing that's much needed?
Tito?
Just through the chair, we've been using CCA and their other litter patrol to fill in that gap as well as with our community police going out and making sure these tickets are written and then to follow up with code enforcement. I've been out with Mr. Durkin and his team, and we've had quite extensive pieces out there that we've been able to move.
Demaine?
Yeah, were these positions created by charter or by ordinance of council? I don't know if that's a question for you, Aaron, or for the law department.
Kyle?
Through the chair, these positions were created by ordinance. This all came about maybe 12 years ago when the county started providing green funding. It used to be 100% funded by Mahoney County. When that funding was cut, CDA started to pick up the difference and provided that gap fill. So those positions were not part of the original charter, but were done under city council authority through an ordinance.
Is funding going to be affected at all now that they're moved over to a different department?
Through the chair, no, funding is not going to be adjusted at all as a result of that change.
And is there any, are there any changes to their actual job descriptions that are changing a little bit here, Aaron?
Chair, for the union position, there was no changes, and for the coordinator position. I just was at civil service, and just a couple things, that they report to the health commissioner as opposed to the director of community and planning development. But other than that was pretty much the only changes. And then we did put a step into the coordinator position. That's, I misspoke. That's what Kyle jumped in. So we do have steps in the health department and that one. And once they work a year, then it would move up to the.
And I think just, Julia's part of maybe your question was, didn't the sheriff have certain, or the person provided by the sheriff have certain authority that now we've sort of kind of lost because he's not there to enforce certain things? Is that true? What are some of those things that he was able to enforce or write tickets differently than just our, environmental people? Dana?
Through the chair, he had law enforcement authority, which means he could write criminal citations, and our community police are able to do that. They work they share office space with our police department, our community police, and they work with Mike Durkin's people. So they will write not only quality of life tickets, but they can also write criminal citations. And they have arrest authority, so if there are any matters that require arrest.
Anything else on this? That's 4, and that was number 5 too. So we'll move down to number 6. Maybe Sean?
Yes.
Harry, sorry.
Okay, through the chair, this is the legislation that I referred to in my presentation, the last council meeting where we're partnering with the Suez, the water department, to deploy the spraying process to help us with some of the corrosion issues we're having in certain areas in our distribution system. This legislation is for.
Do you have those areas identified? You know where you're spending the money already?
Absolutely. If you recall the presentation where I had the highlighted areas and yellow, green, and blue, the yellow areas, and it's also the emails I sent, the yellow areas of the areas specifically we want to deploy this service.
Is there any more questions on this issue or idea? Number 7, Chief Lees.
Through the chair, I'll just move through 7, 8, and 9.
Okay.
7 is part of a grant that we received for drug driving enforcement. The number 8 is the IDEP and STEP, which are also enforcement programs through traffic. And number 9 is an annual burn grant that we share with the county. These grants total about $70,000 in state money we get for the various programs. The last one is for equipment.
Questions on any of these? Anita?
Through the chair, Chief, on number 8, in the actual legislation, it stated that it's going to be used, the city's portion would be used for vehicles and equipment. Does the grant require that we purchase police vehicles? Is that the
I don't know if it
reason for the
actually
language?
requires it. It's going to be an equipment grant. We've traditionally always used it for vehicles. As the sheriff's office has, it used to actually fund a considerable amount of the fleet. The grant ratchets down every year a little bit. So this used to be considerably more money, and it was always fleet.
But, so that language of, in there that says vehicles does not have to be in there?
I don't know.
Does anyone from the law department know, or anyone know? Is that language for, that it has to be used for vehicles? Does that have to be there?
I'm not familiar with the grant language.
We've always used it for vehicles and associated equipment.
Anita?
Well, I just want to make sure that we're not restricted. It's one thing for us to accept that money, but it's another thing to accept that money and have it only earmarked for police vehicles when we haven't decided whether or not we're going to do police vehicles. So why is that language in this piece of legislation specifying police vehicles? think we need more discussion on that.
Does anybody have a copy of the grant that can be shared?
I don't have a copy of the grant, but again, through the chair, like I said, it's always been vehicles, and I know the county does likewise, so I would say it's probably somewhat restrictive to equipment and or vehicles.
Anita?
The chair, I'd like to get a copy of the grant and see if we have to put that in the language.
If it's not in the language, though, they could still spend the money on
They can still spend, but I don't want us,
vehicles.
I don't want the city to be restricted
So-
to that.
So I guess it doesn't matter if it's in there or not, then.
Exactly, if you take it out and just put down as police equipment, and then the chief can, or whoever can utilize it as see fit. We shouldn't be having it so tight.
No, it's not.
Go ahead, Basha.
Through the chair, so does the current language state just vehicles, or does it state vehicles and equipment?
It states vehicles and equipment, but why have the word vehicles? That's my objection, is that it says vehicles instead of just the broader definition of equipment, which would include vehicles.
Chief, would you like to reread the terms before we would
And is there a time-
adjust
is there a
this,
time-
or would it matter?
Through the chair, I don't think it really matters. I mean, typically, we're always hurting in the vehicle category, so it's never been a problem. If the councilwoman wants, it could be tabled, and we could research the grant, go from there.
I like that. Number
Do you
8.
have a deadline on it?
I don't believe it's that tight. I mean, we could, again, put it on the agenda for next time. I actually thought we already addressed this in a previous meeting, to be honest with you.
If we just took the word vehicle out, though, I mean, you could still use it to purchase vehicles if that's what you wanted, correct? Because it's,
Through the chair, I would say so, but again, I'm not sure whether the grant actually addresses directly if you put into that practice. I know historically, going back at least 20 years, that's what this grant's going to be.
so you'd be more comfortable reading the grant first before we took it out in case it has to be there.
We did do that.
Dana?
Chair, just for clarification, of the rules of the police department, it's number 8 that you're, the IDEP and staff.
Yes.
Oh, you're in the IDEP and STEP, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about 9.
Um,
IDEP and STEP are grants for enforcement programs.
no, I'm sorry, it is number 9, I was looking at, that's when it says vehicles, is that Jen? Is what's number 9 and number 8 is talked about the vehicles.
What specifically is your question?
Well, there's 2 pieces there, one that deals with,
It's not, sorry.
It's not-
It will be used to purchase police vehicles and related equipment.
number 9, Dana.
Just,
Nah.
just through the chair, I guess my question is, do we just wanted to say related equipment? Because I think technically, Chief, and you can help me, equipment is all that the police use. I mean, whether it's a vehicle or, guns, handcuffs, that's all equipment. Is your concern that the vehicles are in there?
I don't like, yeah, we just had a meeting, we were discussing the purchase of, leasing of vehicles. We haven't even dealt with that, and I don't wanna have this money tied up. The money tied.
Just-
So the
just-
broader thing was just to leave it past police equipment. And so it could be utilized towards vehicles down the road, if necessary, but at least we're not restricted.
Mayor,
I guess just in direct response, it says equipment and vehicles. It's not just saying vehicles.
So I want that word vehicles taken out. Just word vehicles, but I think it would be better if we research it and make sure that we can take it out.
Whatever your pleasure.
okay, so the action will be for Chief Lees, to discover if we need to or don't need to include the word vehicles in the actual legislation based on the, grant language, and then we can handle it at the next council meeting?
Just to be
TJ?
clear, what it says is, this award will be used to purchase police vehicles and related equipment. So it sounds like related equipment to vehicles. So that's the way you read it. So, you just need to know if it has to be included.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so we can hold this one here in committee then, or do second reading, whichever you guys wanna make a motion for, well, we would hold it in committee. We're not sending it to the floor, or we can send it to the floor, and then do a second reading.
Through the chair.
Anita?
So will it be the chief or Dana, which of you would be looking into that grant? Dana, thank
Dana?
you.
The chief and I will work on this
All
together.
right, thank you.
So we need committee.
We'll hold it here until November's meeting, right, is that the next one?
Yeah, third week.
Well, if you're gonna do that, then just make a motion to move it to a second meeting, and then it'll automatically go on the November meeting, unless you plan on having a committee meeting in the interim. So then your motion will be a second reading as opposed to holding it in committee.
Okay. Number 10, Erin.
Yes, through the chair. We received grant funding for $1,900 from the Paramount Advantage Healthcare to do community outreach, and we did the outreach at the African American Wellness Walk back in August. Just accept it, and number 11 is to appropriate it to.
Questions on this? Is this a new grant for this year? Like, I don't recall seeing this
Yes,
one
so
necessarily.
Paramount Advantage, they have some, if you have some different outreach activities, you can write a simple grant and they'll give us money, so.
Nice. Number 12, Kyle?
Through the chair, this is my role as finance director. I'm declaring 159 of the officers' current weapons as surplus. The police department is planning to turn those weapons in as part of an exchange to purchase their new weapons. We are going to get a credit per weapon towards the new purchase of the new ones. And as a result of the chief meeting with the finance committee, or maybe it was the safety committee, and how he highlighted that the officers prefer this new weapon, it is in the best interest of the city to identify that as surplus, so that we will in essence be able to receive those credits by turning those weapons in to the vendor, and they will take ownership of them, and they will pass on those savings for the purchase of the new weapons that the police department will be acquiring before the end of the new year. Correct, Chief?
That's correct.
Questions? And is this a vendor we normally work with? Like, we know what they're gonna do with the guns? once we
This
get
is an
them?
authorized vendor and it has the state pricing for the guns, basically.
Anita?
Chief, do you have an approximate figure for the net
Uh,
cost
With the exchange and the cost of new guns, it's about a $17,000 cost.
total?
It's a good deal.
Number 13, Mr. Durkin.
This is their assessments that are removed. We do this monthly at our meetings. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And number 14, Dana, is that you?
Through the chair. The Teamsters Union on September 30th sent a letter that we received on or about the 7th of October with documents that they purported to be a collective bargaining agreement that they ratified. The reason we included the dates in that is because it's important that we had to get that to council within a certain period of time for council to take action on that. Well, the city is of the position that what they submitted is not an agreement that was reached between the parties, and we have specific letters documenting the fact that there was no meeting of the minds between the parties, and that we had repeatedly asked to go back to the table, as there were some ideas that were generally agreed to, but the terms of those and the intent of those did not meet out when they sat down to draft the language. We sent correspondence to them specifically indicating that there was no meeting of the minds in this, at which point 2 weeks went by and we received this, almost 3 weeks before we received it, this letter with the 2015 agreement with some pages attached. And they purported that to be a collective bargaining agreement. While we don't believe that it is, because of the requirement that council take action on that, we did submit it to council, asking that it be rejected, as ironically, we've agreed in principle to some terms as it relates to pay increases and the like, but there was some daily job bidding that they requested that the city was not amenable to. And that seems to be the hangup. I do believe that there is an opportunity for them to sit at the table and to resolve this. I was not part of the negotiating team, but in response to that, and there was almost a 45-day lapse between when this originally came up and when they took action, we're just asking that council reject this so that we can go back to the table, work this out, and I think that we can actually reach an agreement short of any further action.
Do you know why they presume to think that that was a definitive meeting that you guys had and they have a...
What I can tell you is that there was represented to the city that there was going to be a vote on some issues, and there was an agreement that the city, a term that the city was not amenable to. They then informed us, we were informed through Flynn that they had voted that down. Their union rep that handled this was gone for 30 days. He was unavailable and somebody stepped in for him, and the correspondence with him very clearly stated that we have not reached an agreement. When this union rep came back after his 30-day leave, he did send a letter and said that there was an agreement. We disputed that, and then they took this action.
Julius?
Is this the first discussion that you've had with council about this, or are we expected to make a decision on this today?
Is this the first discussion? Yes, when we receive it, we had 14 days to provide it to council upon our receipt. We did confer with council that specializes in these issues as to what the appropriate action was to do. Because we don't believe it's an agreement, we didn't believe that it necessarily had to go to council, but they've created a sort of legal fiction that required us to act. So we did send it to council. Council has 30 days then to vote once they receive it. So because the 14 days fell within last week, we received it on or about the 7th. We did send it up to council, so this was the next meeting, but council technically has 30 days to act.
So from today, how many more days do we have to make this decision?
I believe that it was sent to council Thursday or Friday of last week.
Friday afternoon in our packet when it came to us.
Just a question for my colleagues, does everybody feel like they have enough information to make this decision today?
Dana?
If I can, through the chair, if you look at what was provided, there's a piece of paper that was signed by different parties, and then there were union notations that were signed, not signed by the city after the date that the city engaged in some negotiations. They are not language terms, and it clearly says that language needs to be meted out and that there needs to, this is a general intent. So that what we're saying is there's no agreement. There's nothing that we could enforce in this, and it's under the wrong case number. They have it under a 2015 mediation number, and this is clearly 2019 opening of the contract. So if you were to support this, you'd be supporting something that really is unenforceable.
What, I mean, during that meeting that, I mean, I guess the street department walked away thinking that they had something to vote on, or the Teamsters Union walked away thinking they had something to vote on from that meeting. Did the law department write anything down from that meeting and prepare their own version of this?
We submitted to them language that they then rejected.
Go ahead, Mike.
Through the chair, Dana, so what is the process by rejecting this agreement, even though we don't, you're advising us it's not a correct collective bargaining agreement? Does it force some kind of other action, or does it just go back to the table?
What we would ask that we go back to the table. What they intend to do and what they can do are two different things. It was reported to me from media and other types that they've indicated that they intend to sue. If for some reason council were to support something that we do not believe is an agreement, we'd end up in litigation regardless, because the city could not then, if you read the pages that they attached to the back of an agreement, did not incorporate in any way, shape, or form with language as part of the main agreement. It's not enforceable. It's it's a document that doesn't work.
Like,
Just as a fault to that, this doesn't trigger arbitration or something, or binding arbitration.
No.
The rejection of it.
Nate,
So all of this is, you're asking us to reject this, we're gonna go back to the bargaining table and straighten it out.
Dana,
That is our plan and our hope. What the other side chooses to do in that, because they've indicated to outside entities that have advised us they plan to sue us, but that is something that we would have to defend. But regardless, this is a document that we would end up in litigation over.
yep, Tito,
Through the chair, what we need to make sure we understand is that this is workers who are, or they want to advocate what they feel like every day, what I want to do every day. That's where the sticking point is. It's not about wages, not about insurance, it's not about benefits. I'm not feeling like getting on a tractor today. I want to drive the patch truck. I don't feel like patching holes today. I'm going to get on a tractor by seniority. Management has a right, and I ask council, please never give up that right where we can decide what needs to be done for the operation and the service of the citizens of Youngstown. That's what this issue is about, and I think if we go back to the table and let them clearly understand, we're not going to give up our management rights.
Anita,
Well, actually, you just said what I was about to address with this. This is about them seeking a process, a bidding process to bid on the jobs that they want to do on a daily basis. That creates absolute chaos, as it frequently does. I mean, the police department is not quite daily, but they do have that bidding process. And it doesn't necessarily always serve the public by having the workers be able to bid upon which jobs they'd like to do on a daily basis. It's not something that I have ever thought that any city, any management should ever give up, which is management rights to put you where you need to be and where you're best suited.
Dana, if you said there's like the wrong case number, the wrong date on this, how does that even make it valid? That we even have to do anything with it from a council perspective?
If I can through the chair, I agree with you, and that is our first inclination. But when you're dealing with litigation, it's almost a legal fiction where they've purported to give us something that they're claiming to be an agreement, and if a court were to say, oh, it was an agreement, whether or not it was enforceable, then we would have been stuck because we didn't take action. So we believe that the prudent action is for council to reject it, because then we have effectively cut off at the pass the arguments that they would make along the way.
Does it also validate that argument in any way by us rejecting it?
If I can through the chair, we very clearly worded the ordinance and advised council that they purport this to be that, and we do not agree with that. That the city administration does not agree with that, but it's one of those situations, and I often, with lawyers, we are stuck with making the best choice for a set of facts that we can to protect the interests of the city. And we think that this is our best choice. And we did consult with our consultants, who are experts in this area, and this was the course of action that they prescribed.
And you mentioned that you weren't part of the original discussion. Who was from our law department, and who's gonna handle this moving forward?
Well, I wasn't part of the negotiating team. Those are really kind of two different things, which is why I handled it from this end, because they would be technically witnesses. And Attorney Limbian was part of the negotiation, Mr. Flynn, and I'm not certain that there was anybody else.
Does Attorney Limbian have anything to add from that, or give him a chance to?
Since I'm on the negotiating team and a potential witness, should there be litigation, that's where we thought it best that Ms. Lance do the articulating of the issues today. So with all due respect, I would appreciate not having to add any more.
Anything else on this issue then, I guess? Okay. That is everything on our agenda. Is there anything under miscellaneous that needs brought up in the couple of minutes we have? Sorry. What is your name? Oh my God, my pregnancy rate is bad. Sorry. Director of Finance, Kyle.
Through the chair, could we discuss setting a meeting date to go over the third year-to-date quarter for the state, for the city budget? And I need to make you all aware that there is going to most likely be legislation in November coming up that is going to be moving the health department out of the city's general fund into its own separate fund, similar to the police department and the fire department. This is a new ORC code that has been passed to us by the state auditors, where certain health departments, if they are providing services beyond the scope of their current constituents, as the City of Youngstown Health Department does, it needs to be separate reporting under our state audit. What that is going to require of us is, because our health department is funded through the general fund, because we're going to be creating a new fund, we have to change all of the funding positions that are on the master salary to identify this new fund. So it's going to require every single position, as similar to tonight where you saw those two, every single health department position is going to have to be changed by council to have a new funding source. That new fund will be created by council, and as we roll out the 2020 budget, we will separate the health department from the general fund, and it'll now be a fund that will be required a subsidy similar to police, fire, street, and health department. It will be its own standalone fund going forward for 2020. But we need to take all of this action in advance so that we can be prepared as we start the new calendar year to roll it out as a new entity as part of its budget, and to have all of the payroll in place so that those funding sources are correctly identified, so that we can then pay those employees as they begin the new calendar year out of that new fund that will be created by council.
What date, when do you wanna have that meeting? What's the time frame for you?
We have finished reconciling the month of September on, yesterday it was finished, so as long as council has the availability, we can meet next week or push it out the week of Halloween, whatever works for council. I'll be able to provide those reports to the clerk of council, and whatever would accommodate you as a whole to meet.
Okay. Lindsay, can you look at our calendar over the next 2 weeks and see what's available?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I will take my motion.
Through the chair, I would like to make a motion to forward resolution number 1, ordinances 2 through 8, 10 through 14 to the council floor for consideration.
Second.
And I would like to make a motion to put ordinance number 9 into a second reading.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Our great God, we come to you this evening. Hearts are heavy with the loss of a co-worker, a friend, one of the faithful servants here in the city. We pray for the family, Tom Lanton. We ask that you might give them grace and comfort, peace during these very difficult times. Strengthen them with strength that's beyond them. We ask your presence to be felt as we meet tonight in the city council meeting. May we have wisdom that comes from above. May it be done to further the will of God for the betterment of our community. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pinker, do you have an agenda?
Yes, we do, Mr. President.
All right, let's go through the agenda. Notifications. Item number 1,
Receive and file.
2,
Receive and file.
3,
Receive and file.
4,
Receive and file.
5,
Receive and file.
6,
Receive and file.
7,
Receive and file.
8,
Permission granted.
9.
Permission granted.
Under resolutions, number 1,
suspending consent.
We do have two speakers this evening. Prior to our speakers, there's a special notice that the council meeting originally scheduled for November 20th, 2019 has been rescheduled to November 13th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. This will be the only council meeting to take place in the month of November. So, mark your calendars, the meeting has been rescheduled from November 20th, moved up to November 13th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. Our first speaker this evening, Pastor Charles Hudson, speaking on the youth. I believe you have some young people with you, or?
Yes.
What's that? Well, as a group, we have 3 minutes. I don't know how you want to allot your time. Come up to the podium.
Firstly, I want to say thank you a lot for having my church going these kids here from there. And I'm going to thank you a lot. Firstly, you're going to come up, David, they have that.
Hi, my name is David, and I'm 12, and I go to Stanwell, and I get A's and B's. And I like to talk about the program a little bit, and we do a lot of fussing and we go over the trips, and I help out a lot in the kitchen with Miss Robinson, and we do basketball, arts, football, baseball, and we have a studio where we go by and talk and on TV and stuff.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher. I'm 13. I'm homeschooled. And we painted the park at the Lutheran Church on Hudson and Claremont. We also painted the building that's there. And I've been in this program for about 4 years.
My name is Riley Grace, and I am 11. I'm homeschooled, and I help my mom with food. I'm Kazar, my name, and I'm 6, and I get straight. My name is Devon. When we be at the program, we be playing basketball, we have computers, and I'm 9, and I've been at this program for 5 years, and I'm in 3rd grade. I go to Stanwell too.
And I just want to get the words up there. We also have a second location. I've been praying, working on this. Also happening. We're going to have 2 bodies clusters. We're going to be on Main Street, which is Belmont. And we'll be there. We'll be there regular now. I'll sign contracts tomorrow. There used to be some sort of a Lutheran church, a church used to be there. Seminary. Okay, that's where we'll be there also. We're not leaving the south side. We're just growing. And I thank you all a lot for all these kids coming in. These kids are wonderful kids. I thought I would bring the youngest ones in and give them some exposure. And what we're doing, the proof is in the case. So now you see these babies here. Come up and see us more. Thank you guys a lot. Okay?
Our next speaker for this evening, Deborah Cavino. I'm speaking about lead and water pipes.
Water at my residence on Stone Road.
water purifier on our kitchen sink. The weight of the purifier has now made our kitchen sink leak. I have brought pictures, I spoke to different people in the city about the water. They told me that I need to file a lawsuit, and the process of going through it was to get pictures. I do have them, I would like to submit them if I could. At this point, I don't know what else to do. Everything in our house is ruined, and I have no money to fix it.
Deborah, thank you for your concerns. I would encourage you to give those photos to our hall record, and maybe his office will follow up with you and, this resolution. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deborah. Pinker, are you ready to continue?
Yes, I am, Mr. President.
Back to the agenda, under ordinance number 2.
Receive, suspending consent.
3,
Suspending consent.
4,
Suspending consent.
5,
Suspending consent.
6,
Suspending consent.
7,
Suspending consent.
8,
Suspending consent.
9,
Second reading.
10,
Suspending consent.
11,
Suspending consent. Suspending consent.
13,
Suspending consent.
14,
Suspending consent.
15,
Move to planning commission.
16,
Move to planning commission.
17.
Move to planning commission.
Go back through from the beginning under communications. Number 1,
Receive and file.
2,
Receive and file.
3,
Receive and file.
4,
Receive and file.
5,
Receive and file.
6,
Receive and file.
7,
Receive and file.
8,
Permission granted.
9.
Permission granted.
Under resolutions, number 1.
Suspending consent.
Under ordinances, number 2,
Suspending consent.
3,
Suspending consent.
4,
Suspending consent.
5,
Suspending consent.
6,
Suspending consent.
7,
Suspending consent.
8,
Suspending consent.
9,
Second reading.
10,
Suspending consent.
11,
Suspending consent.
12,
Suspending consent.
13,
Suspending consent.
14,
Suspending consent.
15,
Move to planning commission.
16,
Move to planning commission.
17.
Move to planning commission.
Are you ready to go into the meeting, Mr. Pinker?
Yes.
This meeting on Wednesday, October 16th, 2019 is now called to order. Clerk call the roll.
Adamsack.
Here.
Davis. Here. McNally. Here. Oliver.
Here.
Pinker.
Here.
Ray.
Here.
Roger.
Here.
Kitchen.
Here. Stand for the pledge.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Pinker, is there a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes for the meeting on October 2nd, 2019 in the Louis Journal?
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes for October 2nd, 2019, and approve the journal.
Second. Motion carries. Under communications, reports, item number 1. Mr. Pinker.
Mr. President, under communications and reports, I motion to move items number 1 through 9 to be received and filed. INS planning, permission granted, and letters were necessary.
Second. Motion carries. Under resolutions, item number 1.
Authorizing the Mahoney County Solid Waste Management Plan update ratification.
Mr. Pinker.
Mr. President, I move to
Second. Roll call for suspension.
Adamsack,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any other remarks? Roll call on passage.
Adamsack,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Rogers.
Yes.
7 yeas for the passage.
Resolution number 1 has been passed. Under ordinances, number 2.
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to enter into an agreement to repair a 2016 CAT 176605 street department tri-axle dump truck.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinances, items number 2 through 8, 10 through 14, for council passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
Roll call on suspension.
Adamsack,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Rogers.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any remarks? Roll call on passage.
Adamsack,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Pinker,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Rogers.
Yes.
7 yeas for the passage.
Ordinances 2 through 8, as well as 10 through 14 have been passed. Under ordinances, number 9.
Authorizing the acceptance of the 2019 Justice Assistance Grant.
Baker.
Move to a second reading, Mr. President.
Second. Ordinance number 9 has been moved to second reading. Under ordinances, number 15.
Changing the zone classification of the property located at 54 Wilton Avenue.
Baker.
Move to planning commission.
Second. Ordinance number 15 has been moved to planning commission. Under ordinances, number 16.
Changing the zone classification of the property located at 953 Winona Drive.
Baker.
Move to planning commission.
Second. Ordinance number 16 has been moved to the planning commission. Under ordinances, number 17.
Changing the zone classification of the property located at East Woodland Avenue.
Baker.
Move to planning commission.
Second. Ordinance number 17 has been moved to the planning commission. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our agenda. Any other questions or remarks? Councilman Oliver?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a remark.
You have the floor.
I just want to put it on the record as it pertains to the fire station located on the corner of Madison and Elm. Myself, as first ward city councilman, had no knowledge of this fire station closing, nor was I engaged in any conversation in that. Moving forward, what I would like to say to the administration is, if there's any pertinent, big or small issues that pertain to the city of Youngstown, particularly in that particular councilman's ward, I've suggested in the maxim that council person or council as a whole be informed of what's going on ahead of time so that we can take our information back to our constituency, get what they need or what they want to see done, bring that feedback back to the administration so that a decision can be made on behalf of the citizens collectively with city council and the administration. Too many times, either a council person doesn't know about a situation that's happening or the council as a whole doesn't know about a situation that's happening. So I'm asking for transparency and discussion moving forward. I'm not saying that discussions with this particular fire station would have brought about a different result, because I'm just learning about the situation surrounding the fire station just yesterday through text messages and media, but not through the administration at all. So I'm asking moving forward that we engage our citizens and our council people on decisions, especially decisions as important as closing the fire station. Again, I'm not saying that the discussion may have changed the results given the surroundings of the situation, but at least it could have been brought to council and to our constituents constituency to take the authority as taxpayers upon themselves to say, hey, this is a situation that's going on in my neighborhood or at my house or in the city. They shouldn't be redirected and given the runaround back to the council person who gave them the information to call these certain departments in the first place. So like I said, I'm not sure that you're aware that that's what's happening, but those are the phone calls I'm receiving, that's what's happening in the city. That's it.
Nina?
Mr. President, I want to echo what Councilman Oliver said. Yesterday I was caught completely off guard about the fire station. Now, whether that was because of the union brought to the media or not, the fact that it's been discussion, serious discussion about it closing, I think council should have been apprised of it beforehand. These have been ongoing discussions. While it's in the first ward, it's still something that affects the entire city, because if the first ward fire takes place, we need to be some units. If they're going to draw from Station 2, which is in the 6th ward, leaving my ward naked. Second, the only thing that we have been discussing as far as legislation was about the reduction of the county chiefs. Okay. Like I said, this thing about the fire station closing was nowhere on my radar, and I don't know if it was on anyone else's radar. We had been discussing about the reduction of the ranks of the county chiefs, something that I am in support of. I think we are confident. But we can't have things just drop into our laps. Now, I don't think the administration expected it to hit the newspaper and the media, but we should have been apprised of this stuff beforehand because it affects all of us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mayor, you want to respond to that?
Just in direct response to all of what you're hearing, what you're saying, I understand your feedback and to all of your point. When I set out to be the mayor of the city of Youngstown, I thought I would build relationships with every department. And many of the departments I sit down and have labor management people. And in those labor management people, you sit down and discuss potential issues that are coming forward. They decided yesterday that the fire department and their union decided they wanted to take the conversation outside of labor management. I thought I was being proactive to sit down with them and talk about what's coming down the pipe. So it was just something I suggested months ago with them that we meet monthly for labor management. We had that conversation in my office. They said, Mayor, that would be a great idea, let's do so. We did that. And in return, when they left out of that meeting, which I didn't have to sit down with them yesterday, they decided they wanted to go to the meeting. We cannot, and I can't say this more than enough, we can't have, every time we have a conversation, go into the meeting and have a conversation happen. If we're going to build relationships, we have to build trust. The trust was broken yesterday when we had a labor and union management meeting with the chief and his staff and the management here. That's where the trust was broken. They went directly to the media. Here's what we found out. There was no more response after that, which we should have had opportunity to sit down and talk to council as well. But we were just telling them here's some things that are coming down the pipe.
Councilman Oliver?
Just a response to the record, that is important that our citizens know that city council, when we do vote, we vote on a lot of the legislation that comes down from the administration. So it's not like these things are put forward by city council and we're saying this is what we want to do. These are things that are presented to city council, and city council's job is to vote on those particular issues in the best interests of our constituents.
Councilman Gonzalez?
Just a point of clarification or question. So does that mean that at your meeting yesterday, you were discussing the possibility of these changes in the department, or does that mean that you are actually putting in place those changes that have been reported at the meeting?
Just in direct response, that was the conversation happening process, because actually we don't, two ways we operate in the city of Youngstown, through ordinance and DOC, and none of those things took place. This was just what's coming down the pipe. Here's what we have in front of us to deal with.
Okay, so we're not expecting them to close the fire station?
Well, I guess we didn't have that discussion now since we wanted to let that be known. It was more of an FYI. Here's what the issues are. We had structural issues, we had legal issues, and we just wanted to have a good relationship with the union. And they decided they didn't want to have that conversation with us. They wanted to have it in the public side. And as you can see, we're having it in the public side. but that was our way of building relationships with them. And we've tried time and time again to sit down and have good communication with them, and they choose to go into the media whenever they see something they don't want to have. This is the 21st century. This is what we have to look forward to, getting better. It cannot be the status quo of the past. We've got to get better as a city.
So, okay, so we tell our residents that nothing is being done right now in terms of changing the fire department? And you guys are just having discussions about possible changes, or the changes are actually being, I just want to make sure.
There's possible changes right here. There's possible changes. And city council, as anyone knows, that the only way we make those changes is with your help, your approval. So these are just possible changes that are coming down the pipe. And the union decided to go out to the media on their own without consulting us and saying, here's what we want to do.
Councilman Homer?
With building relationships with the union, I think also needs to be working on is building relationships with city council, especially going into direct communication so that meaningful dialogue can happen about various and multiple issues going on in the city.
Sure. And I tell you this, and I'll say it again, the phone works two ways. You can call me or I can call you. If you got a question, concerns, don't hesitate, anytime.
Mayor, I want to call you with something that I know.
And I would want you to let me know.
Councilman Davis?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to be clear, there are some things that are clear within the purview of the administration. I'm not sure if the closing of the fire station is just on you, but the council can say nay to it, but I thought that was something that was within your boundaries. Whereas the reduction of the personnel, that is something that is within our purview. We decide whether or not we reduce the number of battalion chiefs, irrespective of what the administration wants. That's on us. So let's be clear, because there are clear things that the charter that remains within the purview of the administration, and those things are not. The police chief, the fire chief, the law director, the finance director. We have no say-so whatsoever. I want the public to understand. We do not appoint department heads. So when the department head says call your city council representative, I don't control him. That person works for at his discretion. Not mine, not hers, not theirs. So let us be clear where the authorities lie. Instead of having stuff placed over at the city council, so we have a say-so as to whether or not a certain voter gets paid or gets tried. Thank you.
There a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.